Thank you, Amanda. And hello, everyone. I'm just switching myself over to gallery so I can see everybody. My name is Abaya, and it's nice to be here with you today. I feel like I might even recognize a couple of you from the last time I was here in the summer, but probably I'm a stranger to everyone in general. I know Lama Elizabeth and Lama Willa from just being teachers together, but I live over on the West Coast in Canada, in British Columbia, and I work as a prison chaplain. I have been working as a prison chaplain for the last 14 years. So I don't teach in the public very often. In fact, these talks at your community are the only teachings I will do this year other than prison work. So nice to see you. Nice to see people. I would love to just do a quick poll with hands raised of people's lineage. Is everyone here a Tibetan Buddhist practitioner? Yes, 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 no. The people who are not answering, are you in other lineages? Are you Theravadan or Mahayana? Okay. I'm asking because I'm a Theravadan practitioner. And in the times that I have taught with your community, I have really enjoyed the contrast. And so I was just sort of curious how things were going to start. Okay, so everyone can hear me all right? Yes? Okay. Let me give you a bit of an overview of what we'll be doing today. The topic I had chosen was feeling our way to freedom, cultivating embodied wisdom. And it may be that you would expect from a title like that, that we would be doing some kind of movement or embodiment work that is physically active in some way. But actually, the theme of the teaching I wanted to do is feeling. So, feeling as an aspect of bodily knowing. So this would be feeling sensations, but also not just through the physical senses, but mental sensations. So the sensations that we feel on the inner level. And so the talk today I wanted to give is going to be pretty information rich. This is based on a lot of my years of Buddhist study and Buddhist teaching. I've been a Buddhist now for over 30 years. And I did my master's degree, my dissertation on feeling in Buddhism. So this is based on that work as well as based on the work I do in the prison system, which is a place with lots of big feelings. So we've got a nice size group for people to put up their hand really anytime if you have questions. I'm very open to that. And let me just describe what we're going to look at today. We're going to look at Vedana. Vedana is one of the skandhas. So this is an aspect of human consciousness and human being that is often described as the feeling tone. We're going to be looking at how to meditate with Vedana, but we'll also be looking at just sort of our conceptualization of what it is to feel, what it is to be a feeling knower, not just an intellectual knower, but to be in the body with one's knowing and have one's embodied intelligence start to be cultivated into wisdom. And we will look a little bit at just the role of feeling in the Buddha's teachings on dependent origination. So how does feeling support and directly aim us? How does our wisdom with our feeling support and directly aim us towards awakening? Because this is a really important power to be skillful with as a Dharma practitioner, is how to work with your feelings They are the engine that drives samsara. They're the motor that keeps us in samsara, our feelings, what we feel, how we relate to what we feel. So that's what we're going to be looking at, is how does our experience of sensitivity and feeling work? How can we work with it? And how does it lead to awakening when we can liberate ourselves? Anybody have anything to ask that would help you be more comfortable or more ready to start? We're all good? Yeah. Okay. So, how I'd like to start is with a short meditation just to help us all settle in together. And you can keep your cameras on if you want, or you can just turn your cameras off for this. If in the guidance of meditation I offer, I'm not offering you a practice that feels comfortable for you, you can just sort of tune me out and do your own practice, and we'll all be back together at the end. So please take some deep breaths, adjust your posture, and get yourself into a position where you feel comfortable to direct your attention not outwardly, but inwardly. Find your meditative posture and give yourself a minute just to feel how it is to be you as you are right now. With your ears, listen around you to the various noises that are occurring in the room or outside the room. And listen also for the noises of your own body, whether it's the sound of your breath or swallowing or movement. Feel how you are sitting, or if you're in another position, feel that position. But I would like you to specifically focus on the connection between your body and gravity. So the feeling that you're experiencing of weight, of having mass that has weight. So there will be parts of your body that sense pressure, whether it's the back of your legs and your back, the soles of your feet, any place your body is touching the floor or a piece of furniture. Let the focus of your attention rest on that sensation of firm, steady pressure for several breaths, observing and focusing on what pressure feels like, how it is to feel one's own weight. And then try to find the opposite sensations, the parts of your body that have the least amount of weighted feeling. It could be the top of your shoulders or the top of your head. It could be just the awareness you have of space around your chest and head. But there is a way that you could direct your focus around the surface of your body that would let you feel a pattern of pressure and contact. Some areas very firm, some areas somewhat light, and then areas with very little pressure or no contact other than the air. So your body is both grounded, settled, resting on the planet, and your body has potential for movement, for breathing. There's freedom and spaciousness holding us as well. Sit and breathe within this place of being grounded and filled with spaciousness, held by spaciousness. Breathe with these feelings and let your mind start to brighten with your intention to focus on the simple experience of being here right now. Let other times, past and future, be in the background and keep your focus in one time, the present moment, filling your mind with awareness of all the sensations you're feeling. Let your head balance on your neck. Encourage there to be some lightness and some ease in your neck muscles. Let your face relax and your chest and back free to move and breathe. There is a momentum and a flow to breathing. The process of breathing is a gradual, smooth change where the body expands to pull in air and then lets go of this expansion and softly contracts to let the air move back into the sky. Let's spend some time with our breathing, encouraging our body in the most gentle and loving way to relax into the flow of inhale and exhale. Let your attention be on the process of breathing as a flowing movement and encourage the tightness you might feel around your ribs, your back or shoulders. Let that tension gradually shift and soften as you breathe in and out. There will be some breaths that are shorter and some breaths that are longer, and that variability is natural and appropriate. There may even be times when you're neither breathing in nor out. where the body is at rest, enough oxygen in the bloodstream to sit and wait until the next breath is necessary. Notice the feelings in the belly, below your lungs and your digestive organs, but also in the energies of your body. And let any feelings that you have in your belly, in your energy flow, let those feelings be part of the influence on your breathing. As if your breathing were a dance partner that responded to everything you felt. And after we've sat like this for a little while, we can start to work with our attitude to develop the right kind of friendly warmth inside us that will help us be focused in an effortless way. So I invite you all to turn towards your heart, awareness of your emotional side, and invite a feeling of friendly warmth to arise inside yourself. Sometimes this is already present and is an easy feeling to connect with. Sometimes we use memory or imagination to help bring up a feeling of friendly warmth. One of my favorite images is to imagine how it feels to have my cats sleep on my chest, to have a sense of a small living creature trusting and content touching my own body. And in this memory, I find a spark of warm, positive emotion start to arise. And this is where I would direct each of you to find a spark of warm and positive emotion. And whatever brings up that spark, to let your mind rest with it for a few minutes, as if you are gently warming up the temperature of your heart, breathing in the warmth of that friendly feeling. This is a little bit like how a tea kettle boils water. Inside the water, the heating element warms up and it spreads through the water. So inside our bodies, we let a warm, friendly feeling start to arise, using imagination or memory of a moment of sweetness to help the heat of friendship and kindness begin to fill up the body. As our breath comes in and out, the energies of our body move and circulate. Any feelings of friendly warmth that are arising, we let circulate, letting the muscles and skin of our face warm up with friendliness, all through your head, neck, and shoulders. Breathing in a sense of warmth, loving kindness. Let your chest, your ribs begin to heat up. Your arms and hands filled with a friendly, warm feeling. And into your belly, up and down your spine. Friendliness from the body and for the body. Warmth, friendliness circulating through our legs, through thighs, knees, calves, and feet. Today may be a day where a kind, warm, friendly feeling is strong in you, or it may be a day where it's not so strong. And whatever arises is what we work with. But tuning our attitude towards well-wishing, may our time together be fruitful. Well-wishing for our bodies. May our bodies be healthy, comfortable. Well-wishing for every cell. And so, with warmth in our hearts, awareness of our body, our ears open, we have prepared ourselves to talk about the Dharma. You can then invite your mind to begin to shift out of the internal awareness and back into the room. As we switch gears and come back into the group, just let your mind start to shift. Maybe you open your eyes or you move a little bit. And I always like to finish my meditations with a bow. So nice to meet everyone. Thank you for coming. I also feel like I have to do a little whoo whoo. This is the first time I've led meditation for this group that my computer did not turn off because of a power outage the last two classes I taught. My computer ran out of power both times. So I'm so glad everybody's still here. Okay. So you'll see that Amanda's put a document into the chat, and you are welcome to open that just if you like to have some text to read along with. There's nothing very fancy about what I've put together here. It's just a little bit of a couple lists and some reference materials, links. And why I wanted to send this out was because, well, a couple things. I think this will be a lot of information, so I wanted people to not have to take notes. And I do like to use sometimes Pali and Sanskrit. I'm just sort of used to using non-English terms for some things. So this will give us a little bit of vocabulary in case we don't have overlapping knowledge around that. So yeah, you can just keep that open to the side if that seems like something you can use, or you don't need to look at it if you don't want to. Okay, and I'm seeing, great, we've got some more people. So I'm going to start off with touching on some research that isn't Buddhist. It's linguistic, and that's research, excuse me, done by a linguist named Anna Wierzbicka. I believe she's close to retirement now, so this was research done over the last 30 years. But Dr. Wierzbicka is one of the people that's been very involved with trying to identify if there are innate human emotions rather than just culturally formed emotional response patterns. So another person who's been involved with this kind of research is Paul Ekman, and he's pretty well known because he did a lot of work with the Dalai Lama. There's a book called Destructive Emotions that, if any of you have read, was a talk the Dalai, or not a talk, but a conference that the Dalai Lama and some scientists and some other Tibetan Buddhist teachers did on emotion. And it was turned into a very, very interesting book called Destructive Emotions. And Paul Ekman's work is referenced in that book. So this is research that is a little bit older, but the question that was in mind was, do all people feel the same feelings for the same situations? Like if we all had a fight with our spouse, would we have the same kind of feelings? Would we have the same words for how we feel? Would we express how we feel the same way? Or is this kind of experience culturally situated? And so people from different cultures will have different reactions to different behavior. And one other thing Anna Wierzbicka did is she did, with the help of many different groups of linguists all over the world, is they did very intense research into trying to map whether the words that one culture used for an emotion or the words matched the words another culture used. And one of the things she came up with is that there really isn't 100% overlap of any one emotion in all cultures, but there is a shared concept of feeling, that feeling is in fact one of the only words of human psychology that every culture has, and it means the same thing. And this may not seem all that exciting to anybody, but to me, I find this a really fascinating truth. You know, there's not shared language about numbers. We use different types of numbering systems. There's not always shared categories for colors. There's not always even shared reactive expectations for emotion, but it is a universally true thing that humans feel. And for me, this has been a place that I've done a lot of study over the last 20 years. I think because I'm a person that has lots and lots of feelings, but never really knew what my feelings meant or what feelings were. And so feelings here I'm using in a really big, broad category, both what you might call emotions and what you would call sensations, just the whole realm of feeling that a human can have. So anyone who's interested in that, I have linked a PDF that gives a nice overview of Dr. Wierzbicka's work, and maybe you'll find it interesting too. Now, in the Buddhist world, there are some schools of Buddhism that have talked about the sensory component of feelings a lot. The Theravada especially tend to focus on an approach to understanding feeling that is prone to zoom in and dissolve the complexity of feeling into very specific small sensations. In the Tibetan area, you get a very different approach where there's a lot more discussion of emotion and complex feelings are understood. So there's not one way to look at the realm of feeling in Buddhism, but there is one concept in Buddhism and Dhamma that is in all of the lineages, and that's Vedana. And I don't know how familiar people are with Vedana. This is a concept that for the importance of the role it plays, it's very hard to describe, and it's not often taught about. Has anybody heard of this concept before, Vedana? Can you give me a little finger nod? No? No? Okay, a little bit. So I'm going to give two descriptions about this, and do feel free to ask follow-up questions if you have any. So we are having an experience. Moment by moment, we're having an experience. And one of the ways you can look at this experience is through something called the skandhas. And I want you to think about not the human experience, but something like a sandwich. Let's say you were going to have a sandwich, a hamburger, say, and I said, "What's the taste of a hamburger?" And you'd be like, "Oh, it tastes like a hamburger." We can't really name the taste of something like a hamburger or a sandwich easily because it is a layered taste. There's the taste of the bread and the taste of the vegetables and the taste of the filling, the taste of the sauces. And each bite of the sandwich, you're getting a little taste of all of it. And that's what gives you the taste of the sandwich. So it's not that tasting the sandwich is tasting a flavor, it's tasting a collection of flavors simultaneously. Yeah. And the skandhas, which are the layers of the human experience, are like this. When we grasp onto the events in the moment, the now, we're taking a little bite of the human sandwich. And the human sandwich has these layers. And one layer is your body. Your body is a layer of your human sandwich. And it's always having all these sensations. There's tens of thousands of nerve endings all throughout your body, both at the surface in contact with the world and interiorly in contact with other parts of the body. And those nerve endings, that sense sensation, there's different kinds of them. There's nerve endings for temperature and for pressure and for motion, speed. So we're sensing all over our body all the time. That is the first layer of the skandhas, the rupa. And you might think of that as like the bun on the burger. It's the basic that holds it together. Now, the second layer, the second ingredient in the present moment sandwich is Vedana. And I'm going to just put that to the side to go through the rest and then I'll come back. But Vedana is feelings. Let's say that really vaguely right now, feelings. The third thing that's happening in the moment is perceptions or apprehension. So, one of the things that's true about a human is that we are not just filled with sensitivity and feeling sensations, but we're filled with a kind of knowing, our consciousness. And so, at the same time that our sensitivity is feeding us feelings, our intelligences, and I use that in the plural because we have layers of intelligence of different kinds, but our intelligences are feeding us information. We are receiving and understanding things. So let's say you were to hear a sound. The body part of hearing a sound is the eardrums vibrating. The perceptual part of hearing sound is when the vibration is understood as sound, when the brain apprehends, grasps sound as being heard. And we call that the third layer of the body sandwich, sanya. So you have a body feeling things, you have a brain interpreting those feelings. We can say it that way a little bit basically. And then we have mental activities, we have sankharas, we have an interpretation. So our brain hears a sound, and then there's all this associative reaching out through the realm of our knowledge, and our brain comes back with, that's a bird, that's a bird. We name it, we can grasp it. So again, I'm talking about how in the moment, we're not just experiencing sensations, we're experiencing our body, the sensations our body feels. We are understanding what our body senses, and that is a kind of apprehension or grasping, understanding. We name those things, and then we move into sort of working with what we are sensing as a concept. So this may or may not be obvious as to why it's useful information. But how the skandhas can be worked with is that you can learn to feel and sense the sequence of processing that is what our bodies and minds are doing. We are alive, filled with knowing, filled with sensitivity. And in that experience, we are touching the world, touching our own inner worlds, and knowing what is going on to some degree and forming opinions, evaluative opinions. This is happening every moment, hundreds and hundreds of little moments of information that are being processed. Does it feel okay if I leave that there? Or does anyone have any comments or questions about that? I feel like that was a lot of information, but I think that's okay. Great. Thank you for the feedback. So in this layer, we have Vedana. In these layers, these skandhas, we have the Vedana. And the Vedana are going to be what we talk about from here on out. As I understand it, the linguistic origin of Vedana is breeze, like a little frisson of wind that blows over you. And it's been very hard to translate this word. Feeling tone is a lot of times what's used, but today we're just going to call them feelings. And learning how to find and work with your feelings in meditation is one of the more subtle and challenging layers of meditation to work with. So often it's easier to work with it outside of meditation to begin with. So what I'd like you to do right now, and we're going to take a couple little breaks as we talk to do some inquiries, is I'd invite you just wherever you are, just to close your eyes and let your attention move over everything you're experiencing, covering your body and what your body is experiencing, and any kind of internal feelings you have of mood or emotion, your energy level. And either pick a physical sensation or an emotional sensation you're having and try to focus on the feeling of it for a couple breaths. So you're just holding your mind in contact with this sensation. I'm going to guide you through a couple different things to feel. So with your next breath, move your attention to feel the place on your body that feels the coolest, temperature-wise, the place on your body that feels coolness. And then in contrast, find a place in your body where you feel some warmth and move the focus of your awareness towards that feeling of warmth and try to focus on the sensation you're experiencing of warmth. Then move your attention into your mind to the feelings that you have associated with your awareness and try to identify how awake you feel as a sensation. Okay. You can let your eyes open. Um, were you able to feel temperature? Were you able to feel temperature as a sensation? Yeah. Okay. What about, thank you for turning your camera on. What about awakeness? Could you feel a sensation that you would say the sensation of how awake you are? Right. What about even interested? If I were to ask you, can you feel how interested you feel right now? Can you feel something that you would say that that is my level of interest? Yeah. Okay. So feeling is very interesting. Feeling is not just for phenomena. Feeling is for, or maybe I'll say material phenomena. Feeling is for all phenomena. Cognitive and material phenomena are known through being felt. And the experience of feeling, the act of feeling and knowing you're feeling is about the same, whether you're knowing you're feeling and knowing you're feeling physical or non-physical. Does that seem accurate to your own experience? Okay. So this quality of feeling is not just, I believe, a human universal. It's a living being universal. Animals have the ability to feel. Insects have the ability to feel. Plants, I believe, have the ability to feel. Feeling comes with life. Life and feeling come together. So that means that feeling is a very primal experience, very core to life, not something that would have come into evolution at the later stages, but something that's been with consciousness from the beginning. Sensitivity to the capacity to feel the world is our medium, primary medium of knowing in life. Does that make sense? That this is very deep and primal, important to life existing. And you can imagine that the qualities of feeling that are most important is that life needs to know what is dangerous and what is not dangerous, what is food. So basically, we have a kind of inner sensitivity to what is anything that could be good for us, necessary for us. And I'll call it our yum. We're like, what's that? We feel something, we have a little touch of contact with something inwardly or outwardly that has a quality that it might be tasty or delicious or useful. And we go, there's an attraction. And then we also have this innate capacity to know what might be bad for us, harmful. And we go, yeah, yeah. And then anything that's neither yummy nor disgusting, we're just like, "Ah." Now, in the Dhamma, we call these the three types of Vedana, the three tones. That's why it's called a feeling tone of our feeling, can be pleasurable, displeasurable, or neither. So I call it ugh, and because this is a very low complexity response. This is what bacteria in their little oceans of liquid feel. This is, the base level of responsivity that sensitivity has in the world. It's either, what is it? Let's go look for it, or I don't know about that. I don't like that, or irrelevant. And I can see from people nodding that this is familiar to you, which is great. So there's a whole layer of meditation that is learning how to feel this as a separate layer. Remember, I was saying that in the moment, we are biting into life and tasting many layers at the same time. We're tasting what our body feels, we're tasting the part of life, and we're also sort of engaged with our mind. We're engaged with identification of what we contact and concepts around what we contact. And you can meditate at any of those levels. You can have the arena where you're doing work with your awareness be in any of these levels. At the physical level, there's lots of movement work, or not movement, sorry, sensitivity work that we do in my lineage, where you're with your breath, you feel your body sensations, you scan your body. But with Vedana, what can often be useful, I find, is if you can sort of imagine like a simple sine wave, like you might see on a heart monitor with a neutral line and a moving line that goes up and down across the sine wave, that you can sort of maybe imagine that you have, let's say, in your heart, a little sine wave going of that interest. Are you interested? Are you not interested? Is there a pull? Is there a sense of, I don't think so? Or is there nothing? Just a flat movement that is happening simultaneous to everything that you are sensing, everything that you are feeling. So if your body feels temperature, there's a little bit of do you like the temperature or not like it? But liking here is a little more conceptual. It's before that. Are you moving? Are you called to move into the temperature to enjoy it? Or are you feeling pushed? Is there an aversive response? Think of this as the very first impression that your consciousness makes of everything you feel. Does that make sense? And so if you're feeling, well, some people say that there's 60 milliseconds, it's 60 milliseconds in a second, and that you're feeling one thing every millisecond, that you would be, I think that's somewhere in the Pali Suttas that the Buddha said that there's 60 moments in every second or something like that. So you're feeling this huge amount of interest and repulsion and neutrality, interest and repulsion and neutrality. But in general, you can sort of get an overall summary feeling tuning into your body and what it tells you in terms of, the interest or not. So again, I'd ask you to close your eyes for a second. And picture that you have this meter, some kind of a little dial or meter or a sine wave that is sometimes in the positive, there's a sense of interest. And sometimes in the negative, disinterest. And if it's neither of those, then probably it's pretty neutral. And I want you just to feel the soles of your feet up to the top of your head. Feel one part of your body at a time. Sensing for whether there's any obvious lean, inclination, pushing you towards or away from what you're sensing in your body. Just a short exercise. You can open your eyes when you've tried it. Is there anything in you that you found you wanted to say was pleasant or unpleasant? You could do this looking around your room. You could look around at all the different colors and objects that you see in your room and just notice if, as your eyes touch a shape or a color or a texture, if there is a lift or a drop of interest. Now, why this is an important part of practice is because if it weren't for Vedana, awakening would be fairly straightforward. But because of Vedana, awakening is like a thicket of brambles. There's a teaching the Buddha gave called the Paticca Samuppada, the teachings on dependent origination or dependent co-arising. Is that, yeah. And I love that you're nodding. I hope that that means that we could talk about them openly, but if you've got questions, let me know. In there's only really two windows where you can get out of it. There's two little doors out of dependent origination. And one door is with Vedana and one door is with ignorance. So we're going to look at the door of Vedana. What the Buddha saw in his realizations was that we as living creatures are part of nature. And as part of nature, we follow nature's rules, and part of nature's rules, our species survive by having sensitivity, by feeling and having pull or push in our interest. And that this quality of experience, Vedana, this layer of our human experience, leads to preferences, things that we feel interest in, we enjoy contact with, we start to get hungry for more. Greed arises. Clinging to wanting more things that we're interested in leads to, in the long run, greed and motivation towards achieving. Things that we find aversion to lead to, in the long run, preferences to avoid, to reject, to not be part of. And so all the things that cause us to have a sense of are things that we will back away from instinctively. This cannot stop. The Buddha said this in the Pali Suttas. This cannot be stopped. As long as you are in this body, you will have the Vedana. And it will push and pull you. And the pushing and pulling will have a momentum that carries you towards forming opinions, forming preferences. And in forming your preferences, you tend to cling to your preferences. This is sort of the next stage. Not just that you're attracted to something, but you sort of want it. And then in wanting, you start to really want to own it, control it. Not just that we reject things, but that we want to avoid them. We don't want to feel them. And that leads us to a different kind of clinging, the clinging of trying to fight life and make life stop giving us what we don't want. And then in a third way, the most common feeling, which is neither interest nor rejection, this neutrality, where if it feels neither interesting nor unpleasant, we ignore it. And in ignoring it, we miss out on all the information, on all the important roles that whatever that phenomena plays in cause and effect are. Animals will not examine things they don't find interesting. And if we don't find a huge part of our own life very interesting, it will take effort for us to examine it. Most of the time, we'll just sort of want to tune it out. The Buddha said that Vedana is the motor, the provider of energy to the whole cycle of rebirth. And that this, until we have learned how to see Vedana for what it is, which is a response that is innate to our being, but not necessarily accurate to our path's need, the needs we have on our path to awakening, until we can really be free from clinging and craving based on the motivation that Vedana provides, we're just going to be trapped. Even if we understand the Dharma, even if we understand the meditations, and we've done tens of thousands of hours of practice, forums, and retreats, until we can learn to be stable and quiet while the inner winds blow us back and forth and back and forth, we really cannot find freedom. Now, it's been about an hour since we started, and I'm prone to think we should take a quick break, and then we'll come back and look at all of this in practice. Do you all want to take a 5-minute break just to get up, stretch your legs, have a drink of water, and we'll come back, say at 8:10, between 8:05 and 8:10 as you can. Does that work? Okay. Looks like people are back. Got your tea, that's important. Okay. So just as people settle in, where are we at? I have stated that feeling is part of life, inescapable. And that feeling triggers, feeling anything triggers a kind of Vedana response in all living creatures. of either interest, disinterest, or aversion. And that the Buddha talked about how that is the motor that provides momentum to samsara. That's the motor that leads to all the unfolding that causes clinging and craving. And I just want to finish this by making sure it's clear, because I don't think I've made it clear yet, that Vedana does not come from a thing, that it's all from within us and it's variable. So a good example of this is I want you to imagine the difference in how it feels to be in the middle of a hot summer day and dive into cool water. How pleasant, how refreshing, how much there would be positive Vedana to have relief from the heat. But then how it would feel if you were freezing cold and it was the middle of winter to then dive into cool water. It would be the cold on top of the cold would be unpleasant. Vedana is a contextually related experience. We don't just have always the same negative, positive, or disinterested response to feeling the same sensation or emotion from morning till night, from one day to the next. Things can be varied. Vedana is a variable that relates to our other skandhas, whether we understand what things are, what we're already feeling in our body. And even though it never turns off, it's also never quite as predictable as we might think it would be. It can really surprise us. An example would be if you've ever been craving food or craving an experience, whether it's music or food or a walk, and then you get it and it's dissatisfying and you're like, how did that work? There's a kind of belief that our mind has around our clinging and craving, that our expectations will be met. And when Vedana doesn't immediately meet our expectations, it can set up a kind of a clash where we have a moment's freedom, where we can decide whether to reinvest in clinging and craving, nevertheless, regardless of Vedana, or whether let Vedana pull us out of our habits a little bit. So here we are. We're humans. We're feeling. We're having this push and pull. It's driving us to build our preferences unconsciously. How do we work with it? That's the third part of the handout I gave everyone, where I'm bringing in the work of a psychologist from the 20th century. I still find that so funny to talk about the last century as the 20th century. Gendlin, Dr. Gendlin was a psychotherapist who, during his practice, he came to see that two people with very similar presenting problems, cases, could have very, very different levels of responsiveness to the same therapeutic intervention. That he might have two people who were depressed and he would give them the same kinds of support, and one of them would have a huge change in how they were feeling and the other person wouldn't. And he was wondering, what is it? Why do some people go to therapy for years and nothing really works? And other people, it works exactly as one would hope, even better than hopes. What's the reason that things work or not? And he did a lot of interviews with his clients, and he had them describe what they experienced through therapy. He took tons of questionnaires, and over the course of his research, he came to believe that the reason that people did or did not have success was because of something that they were doing internally, that some people were internally processing what their experiences were during their sessions, and other people were intellectually processing. So basically what he was saying is that the felt sense of contact with the concepts and topics of therapy was a really important part of shifting or changing how things worked. And he developed a process called focusing, which, if you look at it and you know much about mindfulness meditation, you can see that it's not at odds with mindfulness meditation. There's quite a bit of overlap between focusing and mindfulness. It's a practice of tuning into your body and what you feel on the inside. So going into the realm of feelings, including of Vedana, and then working with your feelings in a particular way to try to grow them in, make them more obvious to you. In the materials I've sent you, there are 2 links for the section of focusing, and both of those give really nice little summaries about what the work's about, and there's different guided activities there. So if you feel like you're interested in this work, you can go to those 2 sites, and either one of them will provide you with a lot of information. But what I'd like to do is walk you through this practice a little bit, and then finish up by talking about how I think all this can work in meditative and Dharma practice. So one more close your eyes time, if you could, to just settle into your posture wherever you're sitting or lying down, and try to just catch your focus. Take some deep breaths. I'd like you to feel your level of, let's say, your level of awakeness. We've already touched on that a little earlier today. Feel your level of awakeness. Get a feel for whether there is a positive or negative tone in feeling that feeling. Do you feel any interest or rejection, or is it a neutral experience to feel this part of you? And as you're feeling this feeling in yourself, I would ask you if it has any qualities, the experience has any qualities that you could say relate to brightness or darkness. Does the awakeness of your mind seem bright or dim? And these words may or may not be relevant to you. But if it's not brightness or darkness, try to feel your level of awakeness and think of whether it has qualities that you might call big or small. One or 2 more breaths, just feeling how alert you feel, how awake you feel. Whether there's any feeling that you might associate with it of texture, rough or smooth. And then you can open your eyes again. Did anybody find that there was any way or any intuitive experience you had that when you felt how awake you are, you could associate that experience with some kind of a quality, like brightness, darkness, size? Just give me a nod or a shake. Did that? No, did not feel meaningful. Okay. Heather, would you be comfortable describing what you experienced for me?
I think I was having a hard time with awakeness
Okay,
specifically, and I wondered whether another quality might
sure.
have a different response for me. I've been having a lot of pain in my neck and upper back. So it's kind of hard to, I keep on going back to that, which is frustrating. But so like when I was trying to think like, is there a brightness or darkness to the awakeness? And I'm feeling kind of sleepy and it just like I had a hard time. It didn't seem like
Sure.
a natural association for me, is all.
Great. Great knowing. You
And I
might
want to say
ask
one
yourself.
more thing. This has been a thing throughout. I've been very curious about alexithymia because I'm not alexithymic, if you're familiar with that. But I'm reading the focusing stuff. I was really wondering where this would come into it because it's something I see in some of the groups I'm with, and
Mhm.
sort of wondered how that fits into the sequence. Because it's hard for me to kind of really even relate, even though my answer was what it was, it's hard for me to
Mhm.
relate to the experience of being alexithymic.
Great question, Heather. Thank you. I will touch on that a little bit, but I would invite you and anyone else that felt awakeness was not a very good quality to feel is to try to find some other sensation and just see if any intuitive associations arise for you between the inner experience of what you're feeling and descriptive words that have to do with brightness or size or weight. Um, I'm hoping that in general, I'm hoping everyone is going to be able to say, oh, yeah, no, I know what you mean. That sometimes when I feel sad, it feels like a big feeling. And sometimes when I feel hungry, it feels like an angry feeling, or maybe not angry, but like it feels like an oppressive feeling. There's sort of this thing that humans do where every moment of our lives, we have been feeling sensations. We have never had a moment of consciousness without some level of our body feeling sensations. Now, in deep meditative states, the attention paid to the body is almost not there. So you may not know that you're feeling things. But in general, when we're not in deep, deep meditative states, we're feeling tons of sensations, tons of experiences. And this means that all of our cognitive knowing is layered with our physical experiencing, so that the way we interpret the world, even if we're in a field of concepts, talking about our friend's relationship and how their relationship works, we're going to be using metaphors that have physical components. We're going to be relating to the information that we're talking about in ways that rely on physical sensations, even if we're not saying it out loud, because the way we are processing information and have processed information our whole life has always included the physical being present. Did I describe that in a way that makes sense to people? That you cannot be a mind functioning with thought and not have a felt component to that. Thank you for the thumbs up, Anitra. So this is maybe obvious to some, and maybe others would disagree with me. I mean, I'm just describing what I know and understand from my own experience. But even when we are deep in the land of the conceptual, deep in facts and figures and far from the physical world, there will be a felt experience of what we're thinking about. Not meaning just that our body might have some sensations, but that we experience feeling at all times around what our awareness is touching. And so this process that Gendlin uses, I think, is a really great addition to awareness of someone on the Buddhist path because it helps to create facility with identification of what we're feeling. So Heather, you had asked about alexithymia, when you don't have strong awareness of what you feel. Now, I will say that I am someone with that, or at least on that continuum, I'm further at that edge. I came to awareness of my own experience with a lot of struggle and effort, and it's very hard for me in general. And so all this stuff I'm talking about today is been also part of my meditative and contemplative practice as a Dharma practitioner.
We
So let
have
me just,
Elizabeth with her hand up if there's a moment for a
oh,
question.
yeah, please, Elizabeth, thank you.
So I have two questions. I think you're in the middle of answering the first one, so I'll ask the second one. My experience was that I'm not having any particularly strong emotion at this time, but I'm very familiar and do experience a lot of strong emotion. And so I kept coming back to the meditation on warmth and friendliness because that transformed me to a certain extent, so that original sense of feeling a pattern in the sensation of the body that you spoke of in the meditation, that was very powerful for me, feeling the sensation of where there is pressure and different levels of pressure compared to spaciousness or openness in terms of the external world and the part of the body. And so I am wondering if the practice you're recommending requires to focus on a particular sensation or feeling. Let's say feeling, because the way you're using feeling includes both sensations, physical and cognitive inner phenomena.
Mm-hmm.
So, or because the idea of being awake in this practice, I was felt connected to, because of the practice we're already doing and the teaching today and being with you all and the blessing of what is. And so, but I wasn't sure how to work, if I needed to focus on one particular sensation to then be able to define it with big or small and descriptive words.
Well, let me keep going and see if this answers your question. That's a good question in terms of like just trying to make sure that everything is clear. Yeah, and I'll come back and check in with you, Elizabeth, and see if I've done the job of answering. So how Ginlin describes what he teaches is that he asks his clients, when they are talking about something in therapy, to close their eyes and try to feel whatever somatic, so embodied experience that the problem they're dealing with, what it feels like in their body, and then to try to identify the feeling through an image. And they go back and forth between identifying a possible image and then feeling the feeling. And you're trying to find some kind of a feeling of rightness or click, like, okay, I got it. Basically, what he's having people do is both a somatic check-in, so that if they're talking about a relationship struggle they're having at work, then they are first checking in with their body, what these days would be called somatic knowing, to try and feel what their body's feeling. But then he has them associate their body feeling with simple descriptive words or concepts to try to elucidate, like illuminate the details of the experience, so that the conceptual mind and the felt experience resonate at the same frequency. So if you're talking about I'm fighting with my boss. And then you close your eyes and you feel how somatically your body feels when you talk about that struggle. You might end up saying, it feels like I am in a dark room trying to find the door. And that image captures your felt experience of the somatic part of the storyline. So if you can sort of imagine what he's doing there is he's starting with conceptualization, taking it into somatic knowing, then relating that to sort of simple symbolic linguistic association to then have the conceptualization and the somatic resonate with each other. It's a very simple process that can be done at any level. So I think, Elizabeth, the answer is it doesn't have to be a small, discrete sensation. It can be everything in my life feels out of control. Okay, let's go into that feeling of what is out of control. If you had to describe the feeling to yourself, what's the most accurate way you could describe it? And through that, trying to find images, words, or representational images that help the cognitive mind harmonize with the somatic experience. Yeah. What do you think? Does that seem like okay, I can see how that would work. Yeah. Okay. So, going back to what's all this about? What's this for? The Buddha said things are arising interdependently. Yes, we're back to Paticca life is unfolding all together. And as it is unfolding, my sensitive, knowing being is having all these feelings. It's feeling all this stuff. And it is such a detailed unfolding and so many different feelings that I, for the most part, can't tell what's going on most of the time. I here being just sort of anyone who is starting off as a meditator, let's say. And one of the two ways out of this samsaric wheel is to become much, much, much more attuned to what we're feeling, specifically attuned to our repulsion, interest, ignorance. Now, if it didn't occur to you, those three things that and can be mapped to the three kleshas. Is the seed that grows into greed, is the seed that eventually becomes aversion, and is the seed of what eventually becomes ignorance. Or you might say, delusional, like delusion in the sense here of anytime we think that some part of the universal phenomena unfolding is irrelevant and unnecessary to notice, there's a level of delusion to that, right? Because if we're truly comprehending it all arising at once, that means it all counts. And yet there's going to be this instinctive part of us, this part that comes with our biology that's like, meh, you don't care. Meh, you don't need to care. And that's a real challenge if we're trying to get out of the samsaric wheel, but we cannot generate motivation to pay attention to a whole bunch of stuff. Well, there we are. We're just as trapped as we are interested. And what I've found with this approach of focusing is that by undertaking a practice not of trying to just identify whether you're attracted or disinterested or repulsed, but to actually try to create a bridge of symbolic knowing from the somatic to the cognitive, from what the body feels and what the mind thinks. Building a bridge of symbolism is a path to familiarity with the Vedana layer of your experience that can bring a huge amount of facility, of skill and capacity, traction to work with Vedana, because it's otherwise very challenging to just feel on its own. But an example of this, what might this look like? If you're somebody who pays attention to their breathing, you can, through your days and nights, not just notice if you've been breathing shallowly, but try to pause for a moment and figure out, what is the feeling of my breathing feel like? Is it a certain color? Let's say we go with color. Let's say we're someone that color is meaningful. And so we're like, instead of just noticing if I'm breathing, noticing if it's shallow or deep, noticing if it's really reactive breathing or I'm quite calm, I'm also going to try to associate a color with the breathing. And let's say for 6 months, you track your breathing and you just try and ask yourself the question, what color is my breath feel like right now? Not the function of it, but the feeling of how it feels for me to breathe. What color is it? I posit, and this is my experience, that you will eventually start to realize that you have a fairly consistent interpretive language of symbol that is meaningful for you. And so on days where you're breathing very shallowly, maybe you're having anxiety, you're going to feel like your breath color, and again, color here is just one of the many ways you can measure this, but is all in the blues and purples. But when you're feeling very relaxed, maybe it's all in the greens. And the regularity of checking in through imagery to what you're somatically feeling ends up over time leading you, it led me and it's led my students to start to have a lot more sensitivity to Vedana. Because what is hard about mapping cognitive to somatic, head to body, is that you're going from words to wordless. You're going from conceptual to somatic, and they are two different brain waves. They're two different ways for your brain to function, and one of them is non-linguistic. And that makes it a kind of a different track, a different like gear that your brain can be in. But you can use simple evaluative concepts like color, temperature, size, weight, movement to you can associate them, and they make a kind of shortcut between the cognitive and the somatic that once you've worked with for several months, speeds up your capacity to cognitively know what's somatically felt. And it is an incredible way to build up the impact of noticing what you're feeling in your body. Because my journey was my journey is I'm a super thinker. And when I got into somatic work, I just had my life totally changed because I suddenly was in touch with a whole layer of my process that I had never paid any attention to or even really noticed. But I realized how hard it was to stay somatically connected in at work, say. I would have to go home and then I'd need to put on my sweats and roll around on the floor. And, I needed a good hour or 2 hours of body-centered practice to really sink into deep places on some days. And so the transition between what my cognitive emotional experience was during the day and what my somatic emotional experience was never really felt like it got very fast. It was slow, and I had to do a big ka-chunk change of gears. But through this process of associating simple descriptive qualities to somatic feelings, I started to gain a lot of speed in being able to check in somatically and then go back to the cognitive in a way that was much more meaningful than I was doing with purely somatic experiencing work. And what that allows in the long run is that then the ability to track where you are on the sine wave really begins to become obvious, not because of what you're feeling, but because of what the imagery is consistently. It's really nice. It's just it's a little bit of a hack to the human brain that will let that somatic go faster. Please, Heather, what do you think?
I'm just fascinated. This is so terrific. You're a really wonderful teacher, even even if you're going to make us into synesthetics. But like the color thing, I think is going to be really, really effective. I really just love that because I think that the other words are really hard for me. But like that's wonderful. Thank you.
And you're welcome. And it doesn't have to be any one kind of thing. The thing is that the inner symbolic language of your cognitive processing, you already know, even though you may not know, you know. If you create the space to invite imagery to arise spontaneously, your cognitive symbolic language will begin to bubble up and arise. So for me, a lot of my cognitive symbolic language is like lines and waves and colors and light. And I could not even really tell you what some of the things are, but I know them so deeply because, yeah, even though it's not always obvious, we are thinking in symbols. We think partially in symbols at all times. And I don't mean here words, but maybe some of you have meditated into the hypnagogic, where you start to fall asleep a little while you're meditating, and you start to perceive how this dream symbols and the sensory input in that half awake, half asleep phase start to appear, and suddenly you're thinking in symbols a little bit. That's where I have noticed it the most, is in the meditation when I'm falling asleep while I meditate. And I'm like, suddenly the birds are like little blobs of color in my mind. And I'm like, oh, interesting. There's a symbolic layer of processing that's happening under the surface. What's up, Elizabeth?
Thank you. I've been practicing really with what it is that it, so to speak, that is recognizing the color or the descriptive quality, the sensation, and really so that it's a different practice, basically, because the practice of actually focusing on what is seeing this, as opposed to focusing on the thing itself, is a very different, and that might be Theravadan versus the Himalayan Buddhist. I'm studying Chen right now. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, and I love that topic, actually. It's very interesting. And I think where I would respond is that my experience is that when I start to work more directly with the symbolic language that I consider the firmware that's operating underneath cognitive software, like the sort of more basic cognitive processing that is the symbolism, that's very personal, that I am getting very close to the knower, the knowing, that as you drop out of the language, well, even, okay, so let's even talk about the somatic cognitive concepts. Like those words are concepts. And so my brain, because they're concepts that partially exclude each other, wants to think of my body and my mind as separate because but when I get down into the much more basic symbolic realm of experiencing and deep meditation, I know that the separation of conceptual naming is not built on a reality of different things that are separate from each other, that underneath things are much more connected And the boundaries between them are much harder to find, if impossible to find. And so I think that more facility with the deeper linguistic processing of symbolic processing rather than more like conceptual processing is, it feels closer to the knowing. Does that sound like what you were thinking of, Elizabeth?
Exactly. May I ask a brief follow-up?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, do I understand correctly from what you said that in a sense,
Except you've frozen, and so we're not hearing it.
oh, weird.
Say it one more time.
Um, would you say that
Vedana.
Vedana is actually a portal? I mean, there are many, many, many portals to what is in truth, and so to speak. And you had said, if I understood you correctly, that Vedana can actually help us pull us out of our habits. So if I'm understanding, you're really saying that the intimacy, developing this intimacy through the connection of the somatic and the cognitive, can be an entree into the great wholeness, so to speak.
Hmm. Hmm. I'm going to walk through this. So I'm not answering you. I'm just sort of thinking out loud. So Vedana is inherent to biological existence. It is not inherent to mind. It is a phenomena arising from being embodied that does not disappear upon awakening, at least not according to the Pali Suttas. After awakening, one still experiences Vedana because, and this is how I understand it, it is part of, the drives that biological life require to function. So I don't know if I would consider it a portal in the same way as maybe other, like how shunyata as a meditative focus is a portal into truly seeing. I don't know that I would say Vedana is that. Vedana is the, if anything, seems more likely to be the portal into fully understanding clinging. If you really want to understand clinging, you need to understand Vedana. And what I'll say here as the sort of the end of my part of the talk, which is in some ways the most important part, is that the Vedana to really study, if you want to work with clinging and craving, is the Vedana of comfort zones. Your comfort zone is your prison. Our comfort zones are our prisons. And the feeling of that feels right is an insidiously attractive feeling and an potentially informationally rich feeling. Like when you and I are talking, how do you know that you are understanding what I am trying to communicate? Well, you have a feeling of apprehension. You are grasping it. You feel somewhere in you, there is a somatic aspect to comprehending other people's words. And that's when it's not there, you feel confused. And when it is there, you do not feel confused. Confusion is a feeling as well as a knowing, right? And that is a very difficult feeling to not develop a huge amount of clinging to, of I understand, I am correct. And it's very interesting because we need discernment. One of my teachers said that awakening is the perfection of discernment. You see all things as they truly are. And how do we know when we see things as we truly are? We feel it. But how does the feeling of feeling right about something you're incorrect with and feeling right about something you're correct with, how do those two feelings differ? It's so subtle. In the Pali Suttas, we call that somanasa and domanasa, that worldly and of the spiritual realm. Sometimes they call that world, like layperson and monastic, or worldly and spiritual. But what they're really meaning is there are the feelings of mm, mm, that are contaminated with the kleshas. Those are called the worldly, somanasa vedana. And then there are the feelings that are not contaminated with the kleshas, where all of that is happening accurately without the bias of your clinging and craving. And until you can sense with accuracy when you've got it right because you are correctly apprehending, and when you've got it right because it feels exactly like you want it to feel and it's reinforcing your own biases and comfort zone, until you can tell the difference between those two feelings, even a little bit, you're sort of going to have a struggle of undoing clinging and craving, because we do not want to undo our clinging to what is to truth. Like one of the things Thanissaro Bhikkhu, one of my main teachers, he says is that the path of awakening is like the path of a mountain climber up a mountain. It's one handhold and foothold at a time. And none of the handholds and footholds are the top of the mountain, but you must have them and you must cling to them tightly to get up the mountain. You know, the raft of Dhamma is what we cling to cross the river, right? And so there, excuse me, there needs to be some allegiance, some loyalty and commitment to the path. But we need to be able to feel, say, what's the difference between our ego identification with the path and our appropriate clinging and craving to the vehicle of the Dhamma as a raft to take us to the other side. And how do you tell the difference? Most of the time, we tell the difference through waiting for crisis, because it's very subtle. It's very subtle. And if you're a lay person, I mean, I'm a lay teacher. I do not have time to reduce my life to zero and then, you know, like a monastic might, and then spend a lot of time just engaging with really basic similar things every day. I have a very complex life, and I don't know if I would be able to tell the difference between right understanding and comfort zone feelings of right understanding without some other practice to help me differentiate between the two. And so this is my best bet at what is a useful tool that I've found. So that's pretty much all I have to say. And we've got a few minutes if there's anything you need to say, Amanda, or any last questions, but I think we might be done with questions.
So first of all, I definitely want to thank you for being here. This has been awesome. Getting a little bit into my own practice, I'm actually going on a 10-day retreat this coming up summer that is focusing just on dependent origination. So that has been, just really neat to hear from a slightly different, angle of just pulling out the Vedanas and really digging into them a little bit has been nice.
Oh, good.
And also, we usually, part of our wrap up is our Dana talk. And I'm grabbing my link. So thank you once again for being here, and thank everybody for being here and your questions so far. And when I'm done, we'll probably have time for one or two more questions, just that any. But in the meantime, I'm going to put a link in the chat in case anybody feels so moved to provide financial dana to our programming and to our teachers who are visiting. Obviously, the highest dana is being here and practicing with us and asking questions and participating. But if you do feel so moved to provide a monetary support, I think is there for you.